Are you familiar with the Trojan horse? It was a huge wooden horse from ancient Greek mythology that was a peace offering to the city of Troy during the long and bloody Trojan War. It was made by Greek soldiers who hid inside until they were behind enemy walls, and then they ambushed their enemies at night, bringing them closer to victory. Another part of that story is that of Helen of Troy, otherwise known as the direct cause for the Trojan War. The myth describes Helen as the most beautiful woman in the world, and she was married to King Menelaus of Sparta. One day, Paris, a prince of Troy, visits Sparta and meets Helen. Helen ends up leaving Greece with Paris and travels with him to his homeland, leaving behind her husband and her daughter. Angry about her betrayal and Paris's actions, King Menelaus goes to war. Now, the Trojan War is said to have lasted many, many years until finally King Menelaus is victorious. Prince Paris is defeated, and Helen is taken home as a prize. But why did Helen go to Paris? Was she seduced by the young prince's charm or abducted for her beauty? The question has been a source of debate for centuries, but all can agree that it was her departure from Greece that was the catalyst for the war. Through this tradition of blame, Helen's character has been used to define the role of women in contemporary society. In the myth, she is portrayed as a cautionary figure to be avoided at all costs. This is because she betrayed her husband, used her beauty to turn the head of the visiting prince. She left her homeland and her family to be with another man, and caused a massive war consequently. In the end, she returned home with her husband as if nothing had changed. While he was originally going to punish her for her betrayal, Menelaus finds Helen apologetic for what she had done and regretful for her experience. His anger dissipates and he forgives her. This ending can be interpreted in multiple ways. One, she went against the established norm of women's role and reaped the consequences. She left her spouse for love and her husband's reputation, which caused him to retaliate in order to gain back his property and his honor. In the end, she learns her lesson and returns home to fit the model of a proper woman and wife. For feminist rhetoricians, this model for contemporary women is an example of the standard gender roles that pervade modern culture today, thousands of years later. This example is meant to show people why women shouldn't deviate from their roles and what happens if they do. Another interpretation is that Helen wasn't remorseful at all. Instead, she saw the anger of an angry man and waged a consuming war in her sake, and so to survive Menelaus' wrath, Helen merely played the character of a sorry, abused woman. In this analysis, she had been manipulating everyone around her for the best outcome in the situations presented to her, especially when she is met with the hatred and contempt of people from both Troy and Greece who had to deal with the war. This makes her a dangerous character who is able to influence men's feelings and sway their anger even in the heat of a war she caused. This reasoning places her into the archetype of a seductress and temptress. In either case, the bottom line of this myth is to be wary of beautiful women for their faithful and or manipulative tendencies. But that's just the basic version of the story. In the more detailed variations of this myth, Helen is the daughter of Zeus and a human, Queen Leda of Sparta. She was born with godlike beauty on earth, and as a result, her hand was highly sought by the wealthy, the noble, the strong, and the wise. Quote, and they all came because of love which wished to conquer, and a wish for love which went unconquered. Unquote. This is a quote from a sophist named Gorgias. We will come back to him later. In the end, due to a variety of reasons, Helen marries King Menelaus. Now, in a neighboring country, Paris, the young prince from Troy, is chosen to judge the beauty of three goddesses. Hera, the goddess of women and marriage, Athena, the goddess of wisdom, craft, and war, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, and sex. For his favor in this contest, each of them bribes Paris for the title as the beautiful goddess. Hera, a kingdom and power, Athena, military success and wisdom, and Aphrodite, the hand of the most beautiful woman on earth. He chooses Aphrodite in the end, and with directions from the goddess, Paris travels to Greece to reclaim his prize, which is, of course, Helen. So if all of this is due to Aphrodite's intervention, then did Helen go with Paris willingly? This is where Gorgias comes in. Gorgias was a Greek sophist, which was a teacher who specialized in philosophy and rhetoric, or the arguments and debate, or the arts of argument and debates. To provide a basic definition of it, it's a very highly debated topic and deep. Gorgias was born about 1,000 years after the Trojan myth was supposedly set. From what we can gather from his few speeches that survive today, he would argue for the sake of arguing and to demonstrate his use of language. He would often take stances on subjects that went against the traditional viewpoints. One of his more famous speeches is called the encomium of Helen, or the praise of Helen. This speech ran against the tradition of blame for Helen in the Trojan War. His goal to prove Helen's actions aren't to blame for the war, but rather due to things outside of her control. Because of this, some contemporary rhetoricians have considered him a proto-feminist. The first argument he gives was that it was Aphrodite's will that Helen goes to Paris. He reasons that if a god is stronger than a human in both physical force and will, then it is Aphrodite, not Helen, who was to blame. The second argument was that if Helen was taken by physical force, then the blame lies upon the man who has committed the act instead of the woman who, quote, was violated and deprived of her country and bereaved of her family, unquote. The third argument Gorgias presents is the power of persuasion through speech, which he likens to have the same effect on human mentality as mind-altering drugs. In other words, Paris dazzled Helen with his charm and fully convinced her to run away with him, regardless of the consequences. The fourth and final argument was love, which Gorgias likens to be just as powerful as God's will and just as mind-altering as persuasion. If Helen and Paris fell in love, then their actions weren't entirely their own fault. In other words, love makes people do stupid things, and in this case, start a decade-long war. Now, in a way, these arguments seem pretty reasonable, but there's a big problem with this way of thinking. In all of these arguments, Gorgias applies the blame towards an external source instead of Helen herself. By doing that, he takes away any rhetorical agency Helen had for her own self and reason. In each argument, her departure from Greece takes place without her lucid consent. In classical Greek culture, the ownership of beautiful things were a mark of wealth and power. The objectification of women, paired with the prestige of possessing the beautiful, is so deeply ingrained within the roots of Greek society that the rape of Helen was already scripted into the society in which she was born. Gorgias' encomium of Helen reverses the image of Helen as a cautionary figure by placing her into a passive, objectified role. Essentially, he was saying, if it wasn't her fault for leaving Sparta, then Helen really was the faithful and dutiful wife she was supposed to be. The encomium of Helen praises Helen for being the victim instead of the villain. By saying that, Gorgias transforms her to fit the image of an ideal woman, his idea of contemporary perfection, which is to be beautiful and subjugated under the dominant man. Why is this important? We live in a culture of dichotomies. There's good versus evil, rich versus poor. Throughout history, there have always been one side against another, and it always boils down to the notion of the inferior versus the superior. This ideology of domination, as theorized by the rhetorician known as bell hooks, states people naturally want to seek domination over others. This can be carried out through a variety of ways, including but not limited to oppression, exploitation, and the devaluation of others. One such government of power that promotes domination and subjugation is what Hooks calls this white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. Within these systems are structures of racism, capitalism, heterosexism, and more. Each of these structures label differences as either inferior or superior, which encourages competition and even hatred between groups. Of the many dichotomies within society, sexism is especially prominent in today's cultures thanks to the push for gender equality in work and government positions. Today, the image of gender roles is more fluid, and many people can find opportunities to do virtually whatever they want to do in life, regardless of gender. This, however, is a relatively new philosophy. Historically, gender defined an individual's roles from birth. For men, it meant privilege, positions of power, hard work, and labor. For women, it meant bearing and raising children, maintaining a household, and pleasing her husband. For thousands of years, women were essentially objects that were sold from one man to another for money and power. They were valued for their ability to grow life and to sexually please the men they belonged to. And when women tried to break free of that assigned role, they were met with resistance. Helen did not follow the traditional path she was expected to follow. She deviated. She chose to go with another man, and there was therefore met with contempt and hatred by the people of Troy and Sparta. Gorgias' arguments contributes to this patriarchal belief by even further reshaping Helen to fit the idea of role for women. In her feminist theory, From Margin to Said, Hook said power is commonly equated with domination and control over people and things. This idea, in addition to the long history of assigned societal roles, places power in a value system where people passively accept predetermined gender roles. The need for one group or individual to dominate another has influenced the development of civilization for thousands of years. This is why a patriarchal society has remained the primary structure for so long. Even today, we are still struggling to present everyone with equal opportunities, despite gender. Women are still being taught to feel lesser than men. Men are still being taught they get privileges solely because they're male. Yet, with the increasing awareness, those ideas are being fought, and that creates contrasting ideas people are struggling to understand. Men don't get as many privileges for being men as they used to, and now they have to work harder for them. And if they don't earn these privileges, they're not considered masculine enough to be real men. In her writing, Hooks uses the quotes, or says this quotes, when he beats and rapes women, he is not exercising privileges or reaping positive rewards. He may feel satisfied in exercising the only form of domination allowed him, unquote. At the end of this passage, she says, quote, he is an oppressor, he is an enemy to women, he is also an enemy to himself, he is also oppressed, unquote. Going back to Hook's ideology of domination, if people don't have the power they feel they should have, they try to take it in any way they can. Having power over someone else is essentially a sign of masculinity and therefore a sign of status. Now, because of these movements calling for equality, people are struggling under the weight of new expectations or society roles that contrast with centuries of traditions that have already been well established. There may still be a lot of room to grow, but by understanding how contemporary cultures are influenced through the past through the analysis of mythologies and stories like that of Helen of Troy, it is possible to see how far we've come.